Thank you so much. And first of all, let me also express my appreciation and humility for joining this wonderful panel on this so important day, part of the celebration of this coalition. You mentioned it, the Adecco Group operates in many countries, 60 of them to date, and actually on a daily basis we touch almost 2 million workers, paying wages to almost 2 million workers. There's just under 200,000 that are with us directly, but again, in that model that we have, as you can imagine, actually just today we pay out hundreds of millions of wages. It is absolutely clear that the notion of income, of wages, of remuneration, and actually of the value of work is absolutely key to us. And I can assure you that all the colleagues that I interact with in those various countries on a daily basis have that on their minds as well. Now, of course, we believe in fair and decent wages. There's absolutely no question on the why. I think the topic of living wages is very much also about the how. And I mean, Minister of Spain indicated the fantastic work that's been done, not only in Spain, but in many countries on the minimum wage concept. We actually, as Adecco Group, as part of the private employment services industry, have been involved for almost 20 years in negotiations and have, notably in Europe, been able to negotiate the notion of equal pay. So very important again in the private employment services space, this notion that anybody who is with agencies of that sector receives the equal pay than it would at the client or the user company. And again, when it comes to the other notion, the minimum wages notions, we have at the Adecco Group a few years ago wanted to understand how specifically Adecco Group associates are being paid in relation to that minimum wage. And our research across 17 countries showed that our associates get paid over 2.5 times the respective national minimum wage, which is not only true in countries that have relatively low wage settings, but also in countries such as the US, UK, and Germany. And actually, there were more countries where associates earn more than the national average wage. Now, what we must understand, and we know it, we are in the room and in the house where we know this very well, that wages in many countries are set by collective labor agreements. And this, of course, is part of the equation. So to come back to the notion of living wages, they are, of course, strategically an important part of that broad wages and remuneration conversation. And that's why it is so important to have today's type of conversation. Now, you asked me about the frameworks that are essential to implement. And for us at the Adecco Group, one absolute key actually starts with the agenda setting. Because again, we have for many years, and we are looking at the wage issue, but if we want to get the living wage topic into companies, into the employer agenda, we need this to be a political agenda point. And this is what has been happening, hasn't it, now over the last few years. Then we need that certainty, and Sonia, you alluded to it. The fact that we now have a definition is an incredible milestone because it allows us as companies and us at the Adecco Group to start with a baseline. And that baseline, that consistency to start calculating and start building the models is key, and this is actually what we at the Adecco Group have started to engage in. Now, Sonia, you mentioned also the benchmarks. This is a big problem still for us, because there are indeed many benchmarks out there, and there's a series of initiatives also from private providers, which at the Adecco Group so far, and actually in future, we have refused to take as benchmarks. And we are looking for the ILO and the ILO's leadership in setting that benchmark. We want to orient the company in that context. And then, of course, there is the absolutely crucial role of acting in partnership and in coalition. And I really want to highlight here the leading role of the International Organization of Employers that brings us together. Now again, the Adecco Group is part of the private employment services industry, and there I happen to be the president of the Confederation, so I can assure you that the World Employment Confederation and all its members have heard loud and clear that agenda-setting element and are starting to get active as an industry. Lastly, data. Yeah. Absolutely. And what I'd like to really finish with is, right now, the understanding that, of course, this is a journey. We are at the start of it, and the incremental steps that are to be taken are important, but again, we need to have the baseline to start off with, and we're looking very good on that. The Adecco Group is absolutely at that start of the journey as well.